Welcome, you 7,500 amazing subscribers, to the first in-person InfoSec live stream, live from Stark Towers in Tampa Bay, with my friend, mentor, and industry leader, Steve Stitch Hindle. For those who haven't watched before, my name's Simon Linstead. I'm the host and the founder of the InfoSec Live community, and I am very, very excited to be having a chat with Steve today. Steve, welcome, and thank you for letting me stay at your wonderful home.
Oh, you're very welcome. Always. That's what friends are for, right? We're also joined by Cash, the Husky, and Ozzy, the Belgian, which are my two dogs as well. And I say that, and you'll find out a little bit more about me shortly. But I'm going to pass the ball, so to speak, to Cash, and hopefully he won't disturb us too much.
And he missed it. Brilliant. So we're live off the back of the event that we held, the CISO Experience in Tampa Bay last night, where Steve was our amazing host for the evening. For those of you watching who attended, thank you for making it such an amazing time. But today is about the topic of security that matters, post-breach insights. And I'm going to pass over to Steve just to give you a bit of a background on himself and kind of frame what we're going to be talking about today. But as always, please jump in with any questions that you might have. We're going to try and cover them off as we go. So, Steve, please tell our audience a little bit more about yourself.
Sure, I appreciate that. Some of our audience in the InfoSec Live community know me a little bit already, but for those of you that don't, I've been doing this a long time. I've been leading crisis response and incident response around the world for a lot of different globally disruptive events. What does that really mean? Since 2018, so let's cut the story short. Since 2018, I've performed crisis management for large companies that you're all familiar with, for 70 globally disruptive events since 2018 alone. That's just the state of play. And when I say globally disruptive events, I'm not necessarily just talking cyber. We are also talking about things like civil unrest, natural disasters, hurricanes, typhoons, earthquakes, volcanoes, and also man-made disasters, such as, for example, a combination of the two, natural disasters, man-made disasters. My friend and colleague James Green and I and Tim Siner, we ran incident response and crisis management for global brands during the Fukushima nuclear disaster, where we had to learn an awful lot about radioactivity in a very short space of time to communicate with our brands and our customers to make sure there was no business disruption. And what we're going to focus on today is, again, security that matters to prevent business disruption. In 2020, the organization I work for, again, large public organization, $4 billion of revenue, sounds a lot, 160,000 people. I'm a people-centric leader, so it's about the people. 160,000 employees all around the globe. Many of them working remotely. 69% of our entire population was working remotely by the end of 2020, beginning of 2021. So that's a lot to say. What was I doing for that company? What was I securing? I was in the BPO industry, which means we were securing infrastructure for 400 different clients. The manufacturer of Simon's camera, the network provider.
Other brand names are available.
Yeah. But all of your network providers, your telecoms providers, the manufacturer of the camera also makes games consoles and various other bits and pieces in the entertainment industry as well. they were all our clients, and we're a 24/7, 365 shop. We have to keep the lights on, and we have to keep customers interacted and happy. And I have to secure all those interactions with my team of about 65 professionals all around the globe. That was prior to 2021. After 2021, I left that organization following an acquisition, and I became the CIO and CISO for a fintech company. And since then, after building their program, I've moved on, and now I build security that matters. I build strategic security programs for organizations of varying sizes, public companies, smaller companies. I'm working with a company right now that handles all of the coffee for one of the largest coffee making chains, 40,000 locations globally. And I'm running their cyber tabletop in short order. So that's a little bit about me. And personally, I'm a dog guy, I'm an animal guy, but as you may have heard, we've got dogs all around us. Ozzy's asleep in the corner. Cash has gone away with his ball. And I'm on the board. I'm a board member for the American Dog Society. What we're trying to do there is to try and solve the dog abandonment problem. 3 million dogs in the USA are abandoned every year. And we're trying to fix that by focusing on the people. It's going to be a recurring theme. You'll hear it a lot today, focusing on the people.
It's funny you should mention that as well. Last night, we had a combination of leadership and new people into the tech community. And a lot of the subjects all came back to people, right? So as an industry, as someone who's only been in it for 3 years, it's very tool focused, it's very vendor focused. But when you're in a room full of leaders, you hear very little of that. It's more about the people than it is that.
Yeah, and we had a great question that was asked by Tivani, I think.
Yeah.
And she asked the leaders in the room, how do you get to where you are, and what matters most if you're going to achieve like a C-level title or a leadership role? And I'm not sure that she expected the answer that she got, because what we said was at the beginning of your career, you have to focus on developing your skills. But if you ignore the nature of learning the business and the interacting with the people and the dynamics of the organization from a people and a business perspective, you can only climb that ladder so far, because there becomes a certain point where you have to scale back on being a security guy or girl, and you have to become a business guy or girl that also does security, because nobody's going to question your security chops by that point. They're only going to question whether you truly understand how to secure the business. And that's where we're going to lead into.
And there was a lot of that. So whilst I said it was people,
we're not tap dancing, by the way. That's my husky walking across my floor.
We can a little bit. I can't remember what I was going to say. I've just had a mind blank. But I do want to pick up on what Prashant said in there. Didn't know Simon had a Fisher-Price camera. I'm not quite there yet, Prashant. I'm hoping to upgrade for one of those for Christmas. So post-breach insights.
I think a Fisher-Price camera would be more user-friendly, wouldn't it?
I think it probably would. If you'd have seen us trying to set this up for an hour before the show, you'd know why he said that. So post-breach insights, easy for me to say, clearly not. Talk to me about why that's the subtitle of the event today.
Yeah. So when Simon asked me, what do you want to call it? And I said, security that matters. That's my mantra. Building lean security programs that are effective and relatively inexpensive, but also focus on what matters. Achilles Shield, my company, we have a tag, a brand and mission statement, which is protecting your future. It used to be protecting what matters, right? That was what our brand used to be. And then we focused a lot on, that focuses on today. What matters today, that might not matter tomorrow. So instead, we're protecting your future based on what we look at today. So the reason we said security that matters, and we added that tagline, right? That whole, that post-incident piece is because I've been there, I've done it. Sadly, when you go to get a job and you're in cybersecurity, they're looking at you and they may often ask, have you ever been in the trenches? Have you ever been in a breach? It's a big difference between securing it, doing it, running tabletops. Have you ever had live breach experience? Nobody wants that on their resume. Nobody. I can't think of anybody in our audience that says, "Oh, I'd love to be in the middle of a breach. That'd be great. Can I have some breach, please? Come on, breach me. I need the experience." Nobody advertises that, do they? Right? They go out there and they're like, hey, I'd really love to learn about blah. Can anybody get me into a pen testing session? Nobody says, everybody's asking me if I've got breach experience. Here's my social security number. There's my credit cards. Here's my date of birth. This is my dog's name. Here's my mum's maiden name. Come on, make it happen. Unless you're the CEO of LifeLock. who published that online. I guess he was asking for it. So I've been there, and I've been through breaches. What is my accent, Joe? It's a bit of everything. I said I've done a lot. I've lived on 4 continents around the world. I was born in the northwest of England, lived most of my life in Scotland. My mum's Scottish, my dad's English. And I've lived in Africa. I've lived in Scandinavia. Most recently, I've lived in Shanghai with my amazing wife, who's in the other room, securing another company. And now I live in the United States, but I haven't got the accent yet. So it's kind of British, but a little bit neutralized.
You've only been here 10 years though, right?
Only been here 10 years.
Yeah.
But I do say y'all now.
You do.
And the plural, all y'all.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so there's a little bit of that. Okay, I'll tell your story now, if you don't mind. So, he says, finding his feet places. The story is this. In 2020, ransomware was really spiking. It's always been there, but the nature of cybersecurity incidents, and I'm going to rely on Simon to keep an eye on the chat and keep me straight. The nature of cybersecurity incidents, it used to be about fame and fortune. I have a hacker handle, as do some of the people in the audience that know me, because it used to be you'd have your online persona, your name that was relatively anonymized. I was Dead Boy. That was me. Long story for that. Hey Manu. Hey boss Manu. It's great to see you, sir. It used to be about fame and notoriety. You were breaking through systems because you could, and I'm a punk rock guy, so that's fair enough. But beyond that, it became big business. You're all familiar with the imagery out there on the internet, and the god awful salespeople put in their presentations of the guy with the hooker, the guy with the hoodie, the guy with the hoodie.
It's a different program.
Yeah, different program. And tapping on reams of code, right? Don't get me wrong, there are bad guys developing reams of code now to break through systems, but nobody's doing that. This isn't war games, right? It's not Swordfish. It's not 1995 hackers, Angelina Jolie, Johnny Lee Miller, my favorite film. It's not that anymore. And we were doing phone phreaking back in the day and busting through Marbella tones and all this kind of stuff, but that doesn't exist anymore. Yes, there are people doing that, but they're mostly on the good guy side. There is a little bit of monetary gain for them because, bug bounties. Hey, I can breach your messaging protocol and I can tell location data. Here's where I found it. Give me your bug bounty. Give me some cold hard cash. That's the grey hat piece. That's on the good guys, good girls side. But it's less about that for the big incidents. When you hear the big incidents, you hear of, Maze, Ryuk, Alpha 5. You hear all of these organized criminal gangs, these ransomware gangs. You hear all of these terms, all of these names, because it's big business. We were hit twice in 2020. It was in our SEC filings. If you don't know what that is, as a public company, your records are public. When you have a significant or material event, you have to tell your shareholders, the street, the public. So we had to put in our SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, we had to put in our filings as public knowledge that we had a cybersecurity incident. 2 of them, one in March, one in October. The people that break through into companies are not doing it by tapping reams of code and busting through firewalls. It is not how it works. They get in through your people. That doesn't mean your people are your weakest link. That means that people are people. And it's our jobs to secure them and to give them the comfort and the power to know when something's wrong and to prevent those things from happening.
Do you think as an industry that everyone thinks that way though? Because on social media platforms, you often see people making comments about it's the user's fault, the users are the weakest link. And it seems like that blame culture along with the FUD culture in the industry is a bit shit.
And if it's your IT team's fault, then it's the intern. It's the whoever's got the lowest level of experience and expertise. It's not my fault as a leader. Yeah. It's not my fault as a network administrator. No. It's the intern, the support guy. Let's look at what we're facing right now, the MGM piece. What are they blaming, right? They're saying it's an IT help desk person that enabled that to happen. because they were breached, right? It was an IT help desk conversation from a bad guy that enabled a password reset on a system that got them into the back end. Is it their fault? Were they trained on how to confirm somebody's identity? If so, what was your know your customer? What was your identification validation, your ID validation? Hard. I've seen a couple of questions coming in, Young Security Inc. I've seen that as well. I agree with you, people of the only link. I will get to that, your first question about your strategy. So we had a relatively robust security organization. I told you 60 people. We weren't lacking for people in the security team. As a percentage of our IT organization, we were probably looking about 25%. It's not bad, right? We were dispersed globally. We had an Asia Pacific security team because we positioned our security personnel right next to the business. To understand the Asia Pacific market, you need to be there. And I had a very strong leader in Asia Pacific, also from Scotland, in the Philippines, that really took his time to understand and learn the business. I had a European security team. I had a North America team and a Latin America team, because culturally, in the language of business, it operates differently.
Yeah.
So position your security personnel to learn that business, next to the customer, if you will. So what happened? We had a security program. We were certified as compliant to PCI, latest PCI standards. We did an awful lot of PCI auditing all around the world. We had 38 PCI certifications, 7 reports on compliance from third-party auditors, and the rest were self-assessments done internally within the business units. So we were compliant. We were also compliant with ISO 27001, the security standard. And we based our security program, our entire security program, on something that was easily understood, translatable into business language, the NIST cybersecurity framework, the 5 tenets of identify, protect, detect, respond, recover, and now governance.
Yeah.
So we had SOC 2, SOC 2 type 2 in certain areas of the business, and we had SOC 2 type 1. So compliance does not equal security. Compliance is trust. So we had all of that. And we were a public company. We were audited to Sarbanes-Oxley. We had European clients. We were compliant with GDPR for data privacy. We had California customers, CCPA. We had the US to EU safe harbor, privacy shield, come and goes, all this kind of stuff. And no, Mad Dog, you're not wrong. We had a lot of security controls, a lot of security products. And I will park it there. And then one of our customers got breached. Again, public knowledge. I can name them because it's out there. You can Google it and you can look it up on the internet. One of our clients was called Chubb. If you know Chubb, they make padlocks.
Yeah.
They also sell cybersecurity insurance. They're an insurance broker.
Are they?
Chubb, the insurance broker, was our client. Chubb got hit. They got hit by the Maze threat group. And at the time, Maze was one of the most prolific and sophisticated threat actors. Nation state backed cartel, drug cartel, imagine it that way, cyber cartel level organization. Chubb got hit. Their data center in Malaysia got hit hard. Again, public knowledge. Nothing of this is a secret. The irony of a cyber insurance broker being hit by ransomware, right? The industry lit up about it. We empathized about it because anybody can get hit. It's no fun to turn around and say, oh, look at them. They got hit. Don't like the product. Ha, ha, ha. Try and avoid that because we can all be victims. And
you should maybe tell that to some of the vendors out there talking about MGM.
Talking about MGM and talking about Okta and saying, it's because you use Okta. It's not. It's the processes. It's the people behind it. So we were hit in 2020 by Maze. After securing our client, we engaged with Mandiant. If you're familiar with Mandiant and FireEye, they're now 2 separate companies. They were one and the same at the time. We had deployed FireEye and Mandiant into our environment to make sure we were clear because our client had been impacted. Again, delivering trust. We worked with the privacy officer and the security officer at Chubb, who I became very, very, very familiar with because we were there as a partner, delivering transparency across the board. And one of those pieces that came out of that was after Mandiant had deployed their FireEye product and confirmed that we were clean, within 2 weeks, the ransomware that was already in our environment was triggered and exploded like a bomb across our network, filtering out across many areas of the company. Business was impacted, production was impacted, databases were encrypted, various other bits and pieces. And in some cases in the organization, our antivirus caught it and like, oh, what are you trying to do? Nope. But in some cases, the exact same antivirus that we had didn't catch it. It went, oh, that looks a bit dodgy. This antivirus goes, I'm catching that. This antivirus goes, nah, it's fine. Same product, same definition files. It was what they refer to as polymorphic. So it was changing and they just couldn't keep up. I'm telling you this story because we went through a massive exercise of responding to that incident and cleaning it all up. We then engaged with PwC to assess what we could have done better, what we could have done to prevent a lot of that. And even Mandiant turned around and they got so far in their forensics and said, we just can't see where the attackers elevated their privileges. We can see how they get from here to here, then there's a gap, and then all of a sudden they're here to here. And it took a long time for us to get through that. We were still in the middle of hardening up our environment post-breach, when we were triggered by another payload. And that was the Ryuk ransomware threat group. Now, by that time, we had... Different group. But by that time, we had FireEye across the entire ecosystem. We had all of this SOAR platform in place. We had so much more technology.
For those who are watching who've just broken in, can you just tell them what SOAR is? Because I only found this out the other day myself.
Lots of acronyms. I have a sticker on my computer down here that says SOAR is dead. It's quite funny. You'll hear EDR. I say antivirus because everybody understands it and not everybody understands what EDR is. EDR is like antivirus with a big net, because the R component is really important. Antivirus is the ED, right? EDR is the next level. Antivirus detects something and quarantines it. EDR is endpoint detection and response, that third tier or fourth tier of the NIST CSF pillar, right? That piece, the response piece, the EDR platform will contain the threat and stop it from spreading or going elsewhere and allow analytics and various other pieces. It will isolate the system even from the end user, while still keeping it on the network. The antivirus way of doing that is pull the plug. Yeah, instant firewall, cut the cord, done. Can't necessarily do that unless you're willing to take everything off the network and go dead. And a lot of companies, that's their response. There's a Jack Sparrow meme where, if you imagine Pirates of the Caribbean and he says, oh, you're the worst pirate, blah, 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 Jack Sparrow, blah, blah. And he goes, oh, but you've heard of me, right? And then there's that piece of, quick, unplug it, get it off the network. Is that your incident response plan? Well, it is a plan, right? Of sorts. Yeah. So, so 2 incidents. Why? Because it's big business. These are organized criminal gangs, and they are just like any business. They will outsource components. So if a threat actor breaches your network,
waving to my wife. Sorry. Hi, Laura.
Hello, Laura. I'm looking after him. You can see he's still alive.
I'm all good.
Proof of life. Pay the ransom. So I'm not really ransoming Simon Linstead off. I just want to make that clear. Yet. Yeah. The nature of it is the people that do the intrusion, the people that will phish your users, steal your credentials, and get into your network, that's their day job. And then they sell that intrusion. They will say on the dark web, I have breached a global telecommunications company and have this level of access. Who wants to buy it? And at that point, it's for sale. So your network is now for sale on the dark web. I've breached the network. How much? And these organized gangs will say, if you breach a company's network, we will pay you the princely sum of about $5,000 to $10,000. Doesn't sound like a lot, does it? But when you consider that a lot of these hacking groups that are doing this in a bad way, these breach groups, are often in developing countries. So that's a lot of money to them.
Yeah.
And my team and I were constantly fighting fraud, and the fraud gangs were paying for, say, Sony PlayStation IDs, and they'd give you like $50. They offered to pay people $50 for a handful of Sony PlayStation IDs, and we were like, that's not a lot. But when they resold those PlayStation IDs online, they were being sold for thousands of dollars
each.
But to the people that were asked to harvest those, $50 was a lot of money. So if you are breached, you're often breached by somebody that is not triggering the payload in your environment. What they're selling is the access. They're brokering the access and selling the access. So the reason we were hit twice is because the same people that got in were still in. They still had something. They still knew they could effectively leverage that. And after Maze, the first ransomware group that had triggered their payload in our environment, the access brokers sold that access, a different level of access in a different area of the company, but they sold that to the Ryuk threat group to then deploy and trigger their ransomware, right? The first incident, it was a big deal for us. We had never been through ransomware. 70 globally disruptive events. It was 68 at that point, and we had never had a ransomware incident. We'd had various other bits and pieces, DDoS, and virus, little bits. Nothing. No plan, just like people weren't prepared for COVID-19 in the pandemic response planning. Nobody was really prepared for that. Their pandemic response plan did not stand up to the level of supply chain impact that COVID-19 had. Nobody could have predicted that, unless you were Nostradamus, right? The same comes for ransomware. Your incident response plan needs to have a ransomware component, and it just wasn't that prevalent, right? Several of our competition have been hit by ransomware, and we'd watch them just go offline. I mean, just done. And the volume would then start flooding us as a BPO. We would get all of their volume coming into our environment to service customer interactions.
BPO?
Business process outsourcing, the contact center or customer service industry. Contact center is less of an acceptable word for it now, because it's not just a bum on a seat answering a phone. It's now chats, it's chatbots, it's RPA. It is a much broader environment and engagement. So now Ryuk triggers a bomb in our environment, and that goes off. But we were much more hardened at that point, and we were able to get back in business really, really quickly within days. One of the questions that was asked, what is the longest it's taken to put an organization back into operation after a hack? I'd call it a breach, not a hack. Lawyers don't like using the term breach. It has legal implications. Yeah. I don't necessarily like using the term hack or hackers, because actually the hacking and hackers that I know are all good guys. These guys are all assholes. They are criminals. And to show you how big business it is, they have a call center. The bad guys had a call center, right? The bad guys had online live chat with the threat actor to negotiate your ransom. You do it through a chat. They provide you with a portal. And once you ask for proof of life, of have you really stolen our data? If they're in the data stealing, Maze was a data stealing group. Riot wasn't. They just wanted to F you up. Yeah. Right?
It's malicious.
You'd pay to get back in business.
Yeah.
Whereas Maze was like, you'll pay to stop us releasing your data. So you ask for proof of life. Show us, prove us that you've got our files. And then you have to look at the ransomware note, look at the key, usually a Tor or Onion network key. And then they'll go, okay, that key is that file. Boom, look, is this proof of life? And show you your files. So the bad guys are holding your files going, is this your files? I think you'll find it is. Cough up the money. And I was leading those negotiations, working with Bill over at Coveware, one of the best ransomware negotiators on the planet. And we found that it's just, as a contact center, a customer service organization, the customer experience working with these threat actors was as good as we were providing for the likes of
That's scary.
Our clients. So live chat, proof of life, and if you got a ransomware key from them to decrypt your files, if it didn't work, they had tech support to help you with that ransomware decryptor to prove that they were true to their word. Because if you think about it, the reason they have this level of sophistication and support for you, the end customer, the victim, is because if they didn't, nobody would pay. They do it because they have to have a reputation that you give us money, you get your data back.
Okay.
Because otherwise nobody's going to give them money if the keys don't work. So their tech support, who's stellar. Our business was like, I can't believe this is what they are. And it's business people. Follow the money. If there's an incident, follow the money. That's where you'll get to the root cause of it. I'll call that story short. I'll leave you with a teaser for a sequel, right? In true Marvel movie style, right? I'm an Iron Man fan, as you know. I'll leave you with a teaser to say there's more to this story, but that's much further after that we can get into at a later date with a little bit of comedy. But as it stands right now, we learned so much from that breach. We recovered from both of those breaches. The question going back, because I didn't answer it, how long does it take to recover? First incident, the areas of our business that were impacted took us 2 weeks. Now, 2 weeks for a 24/7, 365 days a year operation, servicing the needs of clients and customers, that's massive. That's millions and millions of dollars of revenue impacted. But we were resilient. Yes, our business in those areas, like certain particular functions and parts of the world and certain particular applications, yes, it went down. Yes, we couldn't restore it quickly enough. We were trying to figure out what was going on, right? But we were resilient enough that we could move the call volume or move the email support volume across, say, out of the Philippines, or we had like 7 sites in the Philippines. From site 1, move the volume to site 2. We could redirect the traffic. We could say, yes, you're calling a US number, but that US number is being answered in Costa Rica. And so instead of, if Costa Rica's down, then for whatever reason, we will redirect it to Mexico, or we will redirect it to El Salvador. Somewhere where we get the same skills, the same language. We just have to quickly bring our agents up to speed on how to use the system, redirect the access, bring them back online. So we weren't technically down for 2 weeks, but it took us that long to get fully operational, restore all of the systems. No, I haven't, Joe.
Not yet.
My wife keeps telling me to do so. But if I did, it would probably be a fiction book. Because I talk about it all the time, and I'm sure everybody's heard it, so why would they buy the book? It's great, though. I love it.
You do need to write a book.
Oh, well, there you go. So one of the key pieces from all of that, to cap it back to that, how long does it take to recover? We went off, right? Certain bits of our area, network, site, facility, applications, certain bits went down. One of our core databases went down. The first thing that happens when we got any notification that there was a payload event triggering in our network, we took our financial systems offline. Yeah. They were in Hyperion at the time. And we told Hyperion in the cloud, that's the nature of the cloud, we said, shut our cloud access off. Anything coming from us to you, shut it down. Because financials is how you get paid. It's your billing, it's your invoicing, and really importantly, taking it all the way back, it's your payroll for your people. Take those systems offline to make sure there's no access to them. Air gap them. Even in the cloud, you can air gap them by shutting off the access from your network. So our financials were never affected. Our payroll was never affected for our people. We could keep our people being paid regardless. It was just the infrastructure around it. And in the second attack, our domain controllers were affected. But we'd learned from the first attack, we took one domain controller out per forest so they could never get corrupted. So even if a domain controller got hit, then if they tried to corrupt AD or if they tried to do anything, then they could wipe it out for all we care, right? We can rebuild that particular segment of the domain forest, the network authentication infrastructure for the APAC domain. We could rebuild that because we have an offline air-gapped, totally isolated domain controller that we could restore. So first time, 2 weeks. I want to say 2 weeks to being back operational. That's not bad for a global organization of our size and scale. The second impact, the systems went down. We were back online and live within a matter of days. A few days, a handful of days, right?
So are you more likely, if you've been breached once, are you more statistically likely to be breached again?
Statistically, you are more likely to be breached again. Check it out. Go dig, right? Since 2015, when the Equifax breach in 2015, that's what started the cyber insurance market. Go back to 2015 and then go forwards in time. Since then, you will find a lot more around all of that. And what I would say, it says LinkedIn user. I'm presuming that's Justin. If that's Justin, if that's you, Mr. Merhoff, then welcome. Good to have you. I'm using psychic powers to see whether that's you or not. The biggest thing for us, and one of the biggest lessons learned, was transparency. We talked earlier about what did you have, how did you do it? I told you how compliant we were, how certified, audited, examined. Our team was under a constant evolving 24 hours a day audit cycle. We were being audited somewhere in the world 365 days a year. There was no gap, no break in our audit cycle. We were always being scrutinized by our clients, by our auditors, by the public, because we're a public company. Always under audit. That's trust, that's not security. But because of that, there was always a lens turned to us. So we were always trying to measure our effectiveness and measure our compliance and measure our security and security controls. And then breach happens. One of the things that we did was, again, all that trust you've developed by saying we are compliant, we are certified. You're dealing with the big companies of the world, the banks, the telecoms industries, the entertainment industry. Those are your clients, and they're on you like a rash, because they want to know what's going on. Well, bad news doesn't age well.
It's worse.
It's a mantra that my boss taught to me from day one. When I started reporting to him, he said, Stitch, bad news doesn't age well. If you have bad news, you tell it to whoever you're communicating with straight away. You communicate it, you get it up the chain. Even if it's just a matter of, hey, stakeholders, hey, CEO, this is happening. Early days, don't have all the facts, but now you know, we're dealing with it. I'll provide you with the next update, set an expectation by 5 p.m., right? By 5 p.m., you may know nothing more. Like, we're still working on it. Here's what we've gathered. We're working over here, but we'll give you another update at 9 a.m. the next morning. Or in the middle of a typhoon or a global hurricane event where it's taking out your infrastructure and you're risking your people's lives, we were delivering updates on the hour, every hour.
Yeah.
Communicate back to the people. So yes, I said to you, our competition had been hit. They'd been taken offline during ransomware events. Bigger organizations than us, 5 times the size of us, much more market share. They'd gone offline. And this happens today a lot. Their response was, shit, we don't know what's going on. All we can tell someone is we've got an outage. This is an IT outage. It's an outage. We're working on gathering data. We'll get back to you. Meanwhile, it's a cybersecurity event. Your customer's data is at risk. That's not transparency. That's delay and defend tactics, right? If I delay it long enough, I'll have more information to tell you. We took the opposite of that approach. From the second we knew it was an intrusion event, we didn't know we'd been breached, but we knew something had happened. The second that happened, we told all of our business leaders, hey, we need to get on the phone with our clients. We need to tell them this. And some of those business leaders said, I'm not telling the client X, Y, and Z.
You tell them.
Right? But okay, bring us to the table. This was the best thing about having our security teams positioned right next to their business owners, is because the VP of operations for Asia Pacific could turn around to the biggest client in that region, which is a multi-million-dollar client, and turn around and say, we've had an incident, and now I'm going to hand you over to our team over here who are going to brief you on what's going on.
Brilliant.
We'd prepared statements with technical level of detail and business level of detail. 2 things are very different, depending on what the client wanted to hear. And then we brought it all the way back to say, get your incident response teams, Mr. and Mrs. Client, to talk to our incident response teams. That way we can share data quickly. We transferred indicators of compromise, IOCs, which are technical identifiers, hash values of files, email addresses used to send phishing, Google Docs links used to deliver payloads. We transferred all of that to our clients and said, this is what's hit us. Get these into your platform so that they don't hit you. All of that to say, when we were hit, we didn't lose business. Despite being offline in some areas and transferring things around and causing great deals of inconvenience for our clients, the feedback post-event was, We handled that better than our competition, and we won business. We got revenue from being impacted because we were transparent and we communicated. So that's to answer 3 of those questions in one go, I hope. So we called today, he says, checking the time. Good. We called today security that matters. What did we learn out of all of that? So, for example, we had minimum password length. If you're out there in business, if you're an employee of a company now, you'll know that when you set a password, it's got to be a certain number of characters long. We had password complexity, which means it has to contain both letters, numbers, uppercase, lowercase, and a special character. Pick 3 of those, and that's your password, right? We also had levels of authentication on our administrators. So MFA, which doesn't stand for what you think Sam Jackson says in every one of his movies. Multi-factor authentication. MFA, right? Multi-factor authentication is something you know, your password, and something you have, a little key fob, or a phone, or a token generator, or something you are, fingerprint, retina scan, voice, typing biometrics, whatever it may be. Multi-factor because you require both of those things or 2 of those things to get it up. Key piece around that is that we had a lot of those controls. Password length, 8 characters. We learned a lot from that. We moved away from passwords. We moved to passphrases because if you're asking a user to change the password every 90 days, passwords get weaker the more you change them. The industry has changed that perspective. It used to be you must change your passwords regularly because if they know your password and you change it 90 days later and they try and hit you 100 days later, then they can't get in because they don't know your password. However, it's asinine because the more you ask your user to change their password, the more passwords they have to remember all over the place. They'll do things like write them down.
Or they all become very similar.
Or they'll all become very similar. It's the same, like Simon and Steve 1, Simon and Steve 2. Simon and Steve 3, ad infinitum. Yeah. Simon and Steve 2023, right? Simon and Steve ! Yeah, and it's just
you've been reading my passwords.
Please don't use those passwords. This causes weakness. So now the new guidance is if you've got a really, really strong passphrase, something nice and long, nice and complex, and it works, don't change it. Don't change it unless you have to.
Because we used to be forced into changing them.
Yeah, forced into changing it. Yeah. And slowly the industries are picking up. Mad Dog is ready to get into my bank account and empty it, apparently. God, it's reversed. Not my passwords. It's on every Zoom session I'm on. If it was like that, that'd be funny. Yes, do not enforce password changes every 90 days. So we still did because we still had to be certified as compliant to things like the PCI DSS 3.6.2, which requires password changes every 90 days. So we were waiting for the standards to catch up. So we had shorter passwords, 8 characters. We learned working with our threat responders. Yeah, nothing in my bank either. Thanks, Musa.
Or mine.
We, because I've taken it all. You get it back, Laura, with Simon, if you pay the ransom.
Please let me home.
The key piece we learned from our threat responders, our incident responders, and we went out and we saw a lot of input from a lot of people smarter than us, is longer the password, stronger the encryption on the back end. I say on the back end because your password is never your password. It's the hash that your password is once it's encrypted. It's a string of characters that means nothing to you or anything else except the machine. The strength of encryption on that hash at 8 characters is exponentially weaker than it is at more than 14 characters. The back-end encryption changes exponentially and gets exponentially harder to crack through tools, which the bad guys are not trying to guess your passwords. They're using tools to crack the weak hashes of your Simon64 ! Password. Sorry. And all of those pieces to say, make your passwords longer. Don't make a password, make a passphrase, right? Simon space and space Steve. And if it doesn't have a space, give it an underscore, right? You capitalize the S's in Simon and Steve. You have an underscore separating the words. And that whole thing isn't necessarily in a dictionary. Add in a special character here and there, or a number, replace the E's with 3s, right? Or there's a really good Cyanide and Happiness, I think it is, cartoon Two really good ones. First one is name an animal, horse. Okay. Name me another animal, camel. Okay. Name me something on your table, battery. Okay. Horse, camel, battery. That's your password. String all those things together. Horse, camel, battery. No separations, and put an exclamation mark on the end. Capitalize a couple of letters, and you've got a password that is virtually uncrackable.
And you can remember.
And you'll remember it, because who can't remember horse, camel, battery? Right? Why not? Okay. And then just don't change it if you don't get hit. If you've not got any reason to believe you've been compromised, leave your password as it is.
I mean, that brings me on to another sort of off subject. We've got have I been pwned? Right?
I love off subjects. Yes, have I been owned? Yeah, absolutely. People always pronounce the P. They shouldn't. That shows that you're not a hacker.
Well, there we go.
Hey!
See, we all know I'm not a hacker.
Right. Have I been owned? Yep.
Do you think we need something more accessible for people outside of the industry? Because it's only techie people who really know about that.
So I'll answer that really quick.
Yeah.
Microsoft Defender. Everybody used to think Microsoft Defender. There's memes about Microsoft Defender now. Shit, it is. Microsoft Defender now has identity protection built in. So not only is it scanning your computer for threats, if you tell it what your email address is, it scans the entire dark web to see whether you've been compromised.
Wow.
Leveraging haveibeenowned.com and various other databases. And it will tell your granny who's using her laptop, and her email address is grannylinstead@live.com. And as long as she tells Microsoft Defender what her email address is...
That was really close to my mum's old email address, by the way.
Then Microsoft Defender will tell your non-tech savvy granny whether her data's out there on the internet, and whether she should change her password.
How about us Apple users? Anything similar?
That's a no, so anybody folks. Tell I'm not an Apple fan. I love Simon's laptop, but it's not me. I have an iPhone. I love the iPhone, but I wouldn't use it for day-to-day business. Horses for courses. You may love Max, you may not. Horse Camel Factory. Yeah, I love that. It's great.
I'm conscious of time and the fact that I've got, I don't know how many flagged questions here. Well, lots and lots. Give
me one. You're on 14:47. Give me 2 more minutes until 14:50. Then we'll spend the last 10 minutes answering questions, because I will say this to you all. What matters? Long and strong. I'm pausing for thought. There we go. Okay. That's your passwords. That's what your passwords have got to be. Long and strong. It's like running a marathon, right? If you're running a marathon, you're running a long way. You have to stay strong. Long and strong. See, I didn't make that sexual. Don't know where your brain was going. He's in the gutter, Laura. So
I'm missing you, Laura.
Oh, so long and strong passwords, right? Or pass phrases. Make a sentence and make it over 14 characters. Over 14 characters. If you can do that, you're fine. Because the back end encryption will never be hacked, right? Okay. Look out for what you're clicking on and what you're opening. This is all about the user education piece, right? You're educating users, make your passwords longer. If you're a system administrator in a company, make the system require long and strong passwords so your users can't enter in a weak, low character, short password. You set the technical controls, and in that conversation with Alfie, the administrative control is passwords must be this length, and then the process is educate your users as to why. Tell them why the passwords have to be long, but tell them it doesn't need to be loads of random characters mashed on a keyboard that they have to write down to remember. Make a sentence. Make a sentence. Try and avoid your mum's maiden name, your dog's name, anything you put on Facebook. Try and avoid all of that crap, right? But, let's do spirit level Lego water. Done. Password.
How about password keepers? So we've seen LastPass.
Always have. I use a password manager. My password manager is not in somebody else's cloud, not on somebody else's computer. Yeah. It's my own, but I have a strong encryption key password that then locks that master password. If that master password gets into anybody's hands, then it's out there and it's free game on the internet. So you've got to take steps. And if you are storing it locally, then if you store it locally, replicate it somewhere else, be resilient so that if you lose it and you lose your hard drive, you haven't lost all your passwords. Various other bits and pieces. Password managers are incredibly vulnerable. They are the post-it note and poor handwriting of the digital world, right? My handwriting is encrypted. Try reading it. And so long passwords and patch patch everything. Update your apps. Sometimes it might break them. Ask Simon about LinkedIn.
Oh.
Update stuff. Patch stuff. Patch your shit, as my wife says. Patch your shit, because people break into things by exploitable vulnerabilities. In other words, the second that it becomes, this is a critical exploitable vulnerability, every bad guy on the planet goes, let's write some code to exploit that vulnerability. Who's that going to affect? Only the companies that don't patch, and patch quickly. So long passwords, patch quickly, keep them up to date, and educate and train your users. The rest is gravy, as we say. Why is it gravy? Because the food's what matters, but the gravy, right? The gravy is just, it's there. It just happens.
Yeah.
Security happens if you do the basics. But you can't do any of that. You can't patch if you don't know what you have. You've got to know your people, where they are. You've got to know your people. I can't secure what Simon does if I don't know that Simon's there. And likewise, I can't secure... Oh, look at that. It matches my t-shirt. Oh, fantastic. I can't secure this device. Go hack yourself. Yeah, I don't know if I have. No, I don't. Yeah, I can't secure this device if I don't know that it's on the network. And now in this age of remote work, everything is on a network that you don't control. Identify your assets are your people, as well as your technology, and patch them. I would agree. Simon's unpatchable.
It's very true.
That'd be a nice t-shirt, wouldn't it? Unpatchable. Become unpatchable, with a picture of the duck with a knife in its hand. Become ungovernable. That's one of my favorite patches. So know your assets, secure your assets, which means patching them and means making sure that you're not giving away the keys to the kingdom. Secure them, right? Antivirus, EDR, right? Know what's out there, log management, event management, right? Have a way of identifying and tuning those down so you can see what's going on. All of that is just, it's the basics. But if you have a vendor that says, I will solve your problems if you buy this product, and you're not patching, that vendor doesn't matter. You can have CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, you can have Cortex, you can have whatever EDR platform you've got out there. But if you're not patching your domain controllers, and if your domain controllers have got a replication issue, that domain controller A is not talking to domain controller B, and therefore this one has a weak password, even though this one has a strong password, it doesn't matter, because your fundamental IT controls are failing you. Your processes, your fundamental basics. My boss used to say the fundamental blocking and tackling, right? If you don't have your blocking and tackling done, it doesn't matter how good your quarterback is, talking in American parlance, then you'll still lose the game. Those are the basics. Passwords, people, processes, and assets. Sorry, I can't make that into a P.
No. Passets. Thank you, Steve.
Security that matters.
We're going to have to do these
Let's
questions
do
now.
some questions.
Oh, I brought the wrong one up. Here we go.
I went over, so
it's all right. I'm going to work my way through from the top. We've got quite a few here. Joseph Young. Firstly, thank you for coming along last night. It was a pleasure to meet you. I'm going to bring your question up first, which is...
I'm so glad you know what you're doing, because I've no idea where I'm looking. Okay, here we go. What was your strategy for breach prevention leading up to the breach? We had tabletops, but we were focused on business continuity from a natural and digital disaster perspective. So in other words, we were doing backups. We weren't adequately testing those backups because we were a live 24/7 shop and nobody wanted business interruption. So there was no live backup restore. It was all done in isolated, clean lab environments. Lesson learned.
Was that a pushback from...
Pushback from the business, no interruption, so therefore can't prove that system works because I need it 24 hours a day. So how can you restore it if you don't take it offline? Oh, we'll restore it in a clean lab. Clean lab is not your environment. So yes, so the strategy for breach prevention was good security controls, third-party audits and validation, and all of the respective pieces that we had to do for all the data privacy around the world. Encrypt. But we still got hit. Little tiny gaps, little tiny chinks in the armor that let the arrows through. That's all it was. So that's breach prevention. Hit me with another.
Lovely. Next one. Musa, good to see you, my friend. I hope that takeout that you've had tonight isn't making you too bloated on your sofa. Do the hackers put kill switches inside the malware?
So this is now, that's been actively exploited by the good guys. There are often kill switches put into malware, or at least there were pre-2022. The bad guys stopped doing that because, quite frankly, they don't care. If your bad guy, your threat actor is looking at disruptive events, if what they're doing is just stopping you from doing business so that you pay them to get back in business, yes, they have to have a way of doing so. What is that? What is that way of doing so? Is it a kill switch, or is it just a decryption key to get your data back, right? They've stopped stealing data as much now because the more time they take to go find the data, the reconnaissance period, and the more time they take to then stage that data on what they call a beachhead, which is the server that gets compromised that holds the rack of data they've stolen to just yoink, take it out. That takes time, and the more time they're in your environment, the more likely they are to be detected. It used to be that the average time from intrusion, reconnaissance, payload trigger was about 2 weeks. That sounds manageable from an incident responder perspective.
Yeah.
It's now down to 7 hours.
Whoa.
There isn't a security team on this planet that can find somebody, go, oh, they're in the network. Right, quickly, let's get on top of this. Oh my God, the data's out, right? That's why your automation of automated response is critical to be able to contain that threat quickly and then eradicate, containment and eradication off the back end. So to answer that question, they're less and less putting kill switches in the malware because there's a lot of really smart people out there on the side of the good guys that are finding those key kill switches and then giving them out for free to everybody. So there's a lot less of that today.
Perfect. Thank you,
I hope
Steve.
that helps. I mean, this is one man's endless research and a bit of opinion.
We love it. As a software engineer, is there a way to develop software that triggers the switch or server to down the WLAN or Ethernet?
Yeah, can you? So effectively, that whole thing of cut the cable, instant firewall. That's actually a lot of what the containment aspect of an EDR does. It isolates it from the network, shuts down all of the incoming and outgoing ports, because that's what delivers the connectivity across the network, shuts that all down except for the one port that communicates back to the EDR's master server. We're getting a little bit technical. So most EDRs, most actual containment functions do exactly that. Can you then set a trigger to say disable the Ethernet? Yes. Anything that you can do through a mouse click, you can code.
Yeah.
So if you can right click on your network adapter in device manager, I'm sticking with Windows. If you can right click on your network adapter in device manager and go disable, you can write software that can do that.
I mean, the only thing that I know how that works is the rubber ducky I was playing around with, because you're putting a payload on there.
It's a long time since anybody's talked to me about their rubber ducky. That's great. Sounds like Bert and Ernie.
It does. Right. Yeah. Thank you very much, Steve, for that one. Benita, shame you couldn't come along last night, but thank you so much for your question.
I just found out that we are local. So, by all means, Benita, let's connect and grab a coffee or something. I'm always happy to do so.
Perfect.
What's the approach? Sorry, you go ahead. You're more
come on, I've got to have one job here.
Yeah, please, come on.
What is the approach to threat intelligence, and how is it being used to improve cybersecurity defenses?
It's actually what a lot of our clients ask us before we win the business. They often ask, where do you get your threat intelligence feeds? They want to hear that you're using more than one. And what do you use to then leverage that threat intelligence? How do you incorporate it in your environment? We have a lot of different sources for that. There is many companies that will sell you threat intelligence. I'll name a couple, like Recorded Future, Digital Shadows, Zero Fox. They do brand reputation and threat intelligence delivery. I get so many threat intelligence emails to my mailbox every single day, not just on cyber. I have threat feeds. I used to be a member of the intelligence community working with the British government and the US Secret Service and various other bits and pieces all around the globe. And we would monitor signals intelligence, SIGINT, to see where things were happening and then try and piece the jigsaw puzzles together to figure out what the catalyst or trigger or reason for that was. Again, usually follow the money. We were discussing recently, Simon and I, over the last few days, which came to light, why China had bought billions of barrels of oil reserves. The intelligence community started scratching their head around why did they do that? Is there a war coming? Is there a global crash coming? That's the only reason countries start to buy in oil. And then what happens? Saudi Arabia shut down their oil production. Yeah. Price of oil goes up by like what, $3?
3% in a day.
3%, sorry, 3%.
Yeah.
Guess who made a load of money on that?
Not me.
So, threat intelligence. The approach to threat intelligence is multiple sources, multiple feeds, and either buy a software or have smart people in your organization that can piece those together and make it applicable to you. I hope that helps. Sorry, I lost the lady's name who asked that.
Bonita.
Thank you.
Bonita.
Yes, sorry, thank you.
And she said that sounds like a plan, Steve. She'd love to catch up.
Yeah, awesome. Good.
Okay. Prashant, let's bring yours up here. Doesn't outsourcing introduce a risk of slower response compared to in-house security team?
So that's
good question.
That's great. I'm pausing because I can answer this both ways. It depends how busy you are. Have you noticed we've all leaned in now? We're all leaning into the camera because we're having a one-on-one conversation with our audience. Didn't notice that. That's an interesting. So, sorry. Doesn't outsource introduce the risk of slower response? Bearing in mind, I was in the...
It's all right. No, you're fine. You'll be fine. Sorry, Steve's wife's got a call. She's worried about our bandwidth. We've got about 2 minutes. We've got 2 minutes left, Emma. It's absolutely
all good. So key piece here is, I remember I worked in the BPO, the outsourcing industry. So our business was hoping that our clients would outsource to us. So if we turned around and said, we don't want to outsource our response to another company, we're kind of saying you shouldn't use the BPO industry. Interesting. I'm no longer in the BPO industry. I'm not talking trash about them. I think it's a very important function in the world. I have outsourced my security in 2 other organizations that I built programs for. Why? Security team was lean, small, and I needed eyes on 24 hours a day. You can't get eyes on coverage with 3 people. It's not really going to work, right? And apart from that, you're all busy doing other things, responding to security questionnaires, or you are working audits, or you are building technology. If you're that busy, then the real question has to be, why wouldn't you outsource it? Because you're paying somebody to have a team of professionals who know what they're doing, look at it 24 hours a day. And I had a security operations center. I had a 3-tier security operations center of analysts and managers and management. So I ran an internal security operations center, but I also outsourced threat intelligence and response. We had a managed response and detection system. So I can argue both sides of that shop. Depends on how busy you are and how big your scale is. Right, go for it.
Absolutely.
I realized we were over time.
Okay, we're over time. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring 2 more questions up. What I'm also going to do, and I'm sure Steve won't mind, is for those that aren't connected to him, I'm dropping his LinkedIn profile in the chat right there. So if you do want to connect with him afterwards, I'm sure he wouldn't mind addressing and answering a couple of your questions.
All. Yeah.
So do you want to, we've got...
Slide into my DMs.
So we've got Mad Dogs. What ones have we got here? So it's not a sexual connotation in that either.
It's not Dungeons and Dragons.
No sliding. We've got Mad Dog. You've done another one, but I'm going to ignore you. I hope you don't mind, because we've already answered a couple of your questions. But I do need to bring up the one on accessibility from Justin, because I think this is important. And the question is, I heard accessibility was discussed at the CISO event last night. Do you both feel like it was received well? If you mean when you say was it received well, people going, oh, shit, then yes. And out of the whole room of security leaders, when Stephanie addressed them and asked them who think about this within their organizations.
Who's incorporating accessibility into your programs today?
Out of the 35 people in that room, 1 put their hand up. Do I think it was received well? Yes. And I think it stimulated lots of people to go away and have a think about that. Steve, your thoughts?
100%. I'm a big fan of accessibility because one day I will need it even more than I do today. I use bone conducting headsets because I'm deaf. And I don't mind saying that. But if you met me in person, you probably wouldn't know I had any form of hearing loss, because I've learned over a long period of time to compensate for it and do things that mean that I put the person I'm talking with on my left side instead of my right side. If you stand on the right side of me, or if I put you on the right side, then you're probably in the bad books. So accessibility is really important. One day I may go completely deaf. It's an entire likelihood and possibility. I have gone blind in one eye before as well. So I know how hard it is to interact, especially on screen readers. Oh my God, they're so hard. Because the screens don't necessarily translate, and the text that's on the screens and what's on the screens doesn't necessarily always translate well into words because it's not very accessible. So I'm a big fan, and we really drove that point home, right, at the event last night when we talked about accessibility. There were a lot of cyber leaders there, I mean, one of them, Hadass, she's she's a titan in our cybersecurity leadership community. She's amazing. And
she's coming on as a guest very soon, 2 weeks.
Look out for that. That's going to blow your minds. You're going to really enjoy that conversation. But even Hadass, who I consider to be one of the sharpest minds in the industry, she was like, wow, those are insights and perspectives I hadn't fully considered. And so the question, was it discussed? Yes. Do I feel like it went well? Yes, 100%, because it made people think.
It did. It really did. And you could literally hear a pin drop.
Really hear a pin drop.
Yeah. So Justin, I think, we had a brief conversation on LinkedIn earlier. I kind of threw Stephanie in at the deep end a little bit. But I was aware that it was so important to get that topic brought up. And Stephanie, if you're watching, you absolutely nailed it last night in front of that audience. So I just wanted to say that.
Very much.
Quick one from Joe. Recommend any good security books? I've already posted one on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, so I'm not going to mention that again.
Simon wants to just step left. There you go, or whatever direction. I can't really do it. As you can see, I read a lot of books. Any good security books? That's interesting because, all right, I'm going to flip that and say there's tons of security books out there. Why would you get security knowledge from a book? And I say that because get your hands dirty. Get in and do it, not just read about it. But you would get strategy from that. There is one called, goodness me, I've got it on Kindle, so it's not on my bookshelf. But it's basically a cybersecurity startup. It's called Startup Secure. Thank you. My brain finally kicked in. That's a really good book because it's about how to secure smaller businesses, right? Startups, right? But all of the things in that book are everything we talked about today because it focuses on the basics. So you can do it cheaply and everything like that. But if you ask me about a book which I would recommend anybody in our audience read, I'm going to pull up this one. I'll pull up two. You want to take hold of that, right? And I'll do that. Okay.
I've got to get it straight.
This is by a gentleman called Jocko Willink. Look him up on LinkedIn. Interact if you can. He's incredibly engaging. He's a former Navy SEAL commander, and his book, Extreme Ownership, right, is all about leadership and taking accountability for your actions and leading from the front. It's fantastic. And the next one, thankfully, it doesn't actually write it on the cover. But this is, I can't work in mirrors.
I know it's hard, isn't it?
Okay, there you go. This is the subtle art of not giving a beep.
Fuck.
This is great. I don't like self-help books. I really don't. It's not me, right? I was recommended to read this. My books don't look like they've been read. It's because I have OCD, people. I take really good care. I don't even crack the spine. I read like this. So subtle art of not giving a beep and Extreme Ownership. Those are two books that I hope would help anybody.
Prashant, please don't apologise for the load of questions. I'm so thankful.
And make your bed.
Bringing those
Sorry,
in.
I can't ignore this book. This book will change your life, and it's really short. Admiral William McRaven, and you can actually, if you don't want to read the book,
there's a YouTube.
Google it. There's a YouTube video where he delivered this in a commencement speech.
It's amazing.
This is basically the book of the commencement speech. It's really small. This will change your life. It really will.
Start your day as you mean to go on. I think one of the key points out of there is making your bed in the morning.
Make your bed in the morning, every morning. So that when you get into it at night, at least you know you've accomplished one thing that day. Yeah.
Steve, it's been a pleasure. And thank you.
I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Thank you for your hospitality and your beautiful home for the last few days as well.
That's why we're here.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good. My dogs have enjoyed having Simon's company too. Simon's a dog person just like me. So
and I'm looking forward to having a little dip in the pool this afternoon.
Hey, we'll see. It's like it's that time of year.
So everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. I've dropped Steve's link for LinkedIn.
Please connect with me. Chat. You'll find I'm not scary. I was once described by one of my team and one of my vendors as one of the most terrifying people they've ever met. I don't understand it personally, but then again, that vendor did fuck up, so I'll leave it alone.
There we go. Don't get on the wrong side of Steve. There's the answer.
Please get on the wrong side of Steve. Because it's here. I'll never know you're there. I can't hear you.
Everyone, thank you so much. I'm going to play us out with our usual outro. We've got a packed week of content next week, kicking off on Monday with Jesse Bolt from Bolt Services. It's going to be an exciting one about the cyber talent. So
I love Prashant. He's one of the most scary people on LinkedIn.
Prashant is amazing. Great member of the community. Everyone, thank you so much. Have a great weekend. See you all soon.
Cheers, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you.